In an instruction that he gave, which I like very much, I find it's very helpful. You may find it's very helpful today or tomorrow or in the future. Hear with a spiritual ear the sound of the holy name. What does that mean? Well, maybe you remember from the first Friday evening, the presentation that showed the sequence of how sound goes to the ear, to the mind, to the intelligence, and spiritual sound, para, Brahman, goes to the soul. Spiritual sound goes directly to the soul. And the soul has form. And the form has ears and other senses. And hear with the spiritual ear. So it means hearing, one of the ways of saying what that means, it's hearing from the spiritual platform, as opposed to hearing just on the auditory level or as if it's a material sound. So it takes some faith and some purification to cleanse the covering, so we're not just hearing the sound as a material sound, but hearing it as it is, a spiritual sound vibration. So with the spiritual ear. Or another way of saying the same thing, as we discussed from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the letter that you surely remember, by hearing and hearing and hearing, the covering becomes effaced, and after the covering becomes more than effaced but removed, one may, by good fortune, have one's spiritual form revealed. And then from that spiritual form, Krishna's spiritual form. It's all by Krishna's mercy. So that spiritual form also has spiritual ears. So it's hearing on that platform, the platform of realization of one's spiritual identity. And one can approach that incrementally. It's not like an on and off switch. It's like a dimmer switch. So the closer we get to hearing with rapt attention, it's a nice phrase, rapt attention, then that means one is hearing with the spiritual ear up to the stage of perfection. Can you advance this next slide, please? Remember that image? It looks a little, background looked a little different, but in the lower circle, that's para, and these other Sanskrit terms are indicating hearing with the ear, and then the signal from the ear goes to the central switchboard, the mind, and registers, aha, there's a sound, and the intelligence discriminates, what's that sound? And material sound stops there. But spiritual sound, and the column on the right, the same flow, but internal spiritual sound, that's para. There's details, but it gives you an idea. If you want to read more about it, there's the reference from Canto 11, Chapter 21, Srimad Bhagavatam. That's in the Uddhava Gita section of the Bhagavatam, from Krishna speaking to Uddhava about proper hearing. And reference is then made to the Rig Veda, where all of this terminology is found. But I like this diagram and the concept. By the way, this is Bhanu Swami's gift, this particular diagram. But the scripture is available for all of us. And the idea of hearing with a spiritual ear is the spiritual sound it does, even in a plant or a non-moving living entity, it goes to the soul platform. Because the souls are of the same quality as spiritual sound. We spent the first class discussing the sound Om, and the sound Om is from the same spiritual realm or strata as the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's signifying or inviting one into another dimension of the absolute truth. But spiritual sound acts directly on the soul. Could you advance to the next slide, please? Now, generally, we're accustomed to experiencing this. And we want it to not be like that. But as long as the candle is in a windy place, then it's going to flicker. You can't wish it to not flicker. It's going to do like that. So now I want to read from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's writing. The name of the Lord and the Lord himself are not two separate entities, but one. So that's abhinatvam nama namino. We know the philosophy. Experiencing it is something else. When the sound of the holy name passes over the lips, the conditioned sense of hearing and the conditioned consciousness initially processes the sound as if it were material, and that is how it is perceived. As a result, only the external ear hears it. It's spiritual sound, but only the external ear hears it. At least it doesn't register. It's acting on the soul, but it doesn't register in consciousness, although it's acting on the soul. Paragraph. Since the other senses and the mind, that's, 5 senses in the mind make 6. So what the function of the mind is, it's the collector of sensory experience. Now, I like visual things to help me understand concepts. Maybe you've seen from the past when telephones there's a little light that goes on and there's a switchboard operator and she sees and she connects this input with that output and connects this telephone caller with that telephone receiver. It's the switchboard operator. She connects this with that. So the mind is that kind of thing. There's an auditory signal comes in, and then where do you connect it? And that's the auditory sense is assisted by the mind, which acts like the central switchboard. The collector of sense, all, not just ear, but all sensory experience goes to the mind. And Bhaktisiddhanta writes, the mind and the other 4 senses are envious of the ear, which they consider to be an equal partner. But he, Bhaktisiddhanta, places the ear above the mind in terms of its power and strength and capacity. Its function isn't the same, but what it can achieve is more than what the mind can achieve. It's superior. The result is that such chanting does not affect the cleansing of anarthas. We spent some time on namabhas, and different things are said about namabhas, and it's glorious. However, namabhas is insufficient. It's sufficient to nullify and completely remove reactions to sins. right? Namabhas has the power to completely nullify reactions to sins, prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma and squeaky clean. But it doesn't have the power to remove anarthas. And most of us are on the Namabhas platform. It's what to do. Because when you chant, when you practice bhakti and chant, you discover something. There's all kinds of stuff inside there that I had no idea it was there because I was too busy being an enjoyer, trying to be. And now I'm trying to be a devotee and connect with the source of everything. And look at all this, obstacles, anarthas within the heart. So Namabhas can illuminate the anarthas in the heart. Then what's needed is one must strive to overcome offenses, because offenses build anarthas. And offense less eradicates anarthas, at least moving towards. That's called the clearing stage. You with me? That's what Bhaktisiddhanta is describing that in a unique way. The cleansing power of striving to become offenseless in chanting. Say it the other way. Supposing you don't strive to become offenseless in chanting, it's a slow boat. Supposing you're a new devotee, and you don't know too much about offenselessness, but you hear about it. You're like, just getting started from the starting block. Now, there's a little effort, but not too much cognizance about what offenses are. Let's take the first offense, sadhu ninda. In the 10 offenses, that's the first one. Sadhu, ninda. Vilifying or disrespecting sadhu. That's an offense against the holy name. So to become civilized, or to speak of an offenseless chanter, that's something that we have to work on. And there's the alternative to being disrespectful, and that's respect. And then it gets into, it gets a little dicey. How do you respect somebody that does bad stuff? Or speaks harshly, or, then it gets, we don't need to go there, right, at this particular time, because I want to have a short class. But slowly, the 10 offenses have to be addressed. And as they become addressed, even incrementally, then the power to remove anarthas increases, the dimmer switch. Striving, I'll say it again, striving to become offenseless in chanting has the power to remove anarthas. But if it stops there, just hear the sound, then sins can be eradicated, but anarthas are still hanging around. You can see them, or at least recognize their presence, but it doesn't so quickly remove them. Paragraph. We do not have the capacity even to theoretically know that the name and the Lord of the name are one. No, theoretically, we've heard it, and we all will nod our head, yes. Abhinatvam nama namino, the name and the object named with spiritual sound, is absolute, and therefore the name and the object named are one thing. There's no difference, absolutely no difference. Now we can say it, but how much do we understand it? His point is, it's not something that we're going to be able to understand. He's saying, even theoretically. Yet, here's the good news. Just as piercing of the ear is one of the Vedic rites for a young child, when our spiritual ear has been pierced by the holy name, the other senses give up their envy of the auditory sense. They no longer quibble with the ear, which alone can perceive transcendental sound. Then the flood of prema pours forth from all the spiritual senses and cleans away the contaminants of opposition and malice. Remember from what Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote about the different kinds of inattention, and this is one. Vilification, or an attitude towards God. Because if I want to enjoy separately from God, who cares? Or apathy rampant up, and it becomes opposition and malice. And that's the entrenched position of a conditioned soul. The good news is the ear has the capacity to overcome that problem. Where did the problem arise from? It arises, the seed or the root is, I want to enjoy separately. Misuse of free will becomes the problem of this either apathy and indifference or malice and opposition. It's subtle, but the holy name has the potency to address the subtle. And what we need to do today, 64 round day, is hear. Pretty simple. And then watch the distractions come instead of hearing. Paragraph. Thereafter, the Lord's beautiful form, qualities, associates, and pastimes are revealed in the name Himself, with a capital H, within the name Himself, and experienced by the chanter. Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundara Ki Jai. Thereafter, the Lord's beautiful form, qualities, associates, and pastimes are revealed in the name Himself and experienced by the chanter as something quite distinct from his previous experience in the mundane world. Now that's gradual. It sounds like the opening of the curtain, but it's gradual and sequential. Then the kinds of worries and distractions of the mind that are typical of the conditioned living being cannot remain. When the coverings are removed, the problem of material existence is also removed. Can you go to the next slide, please? There, Krishna's help. Here's the next slide. Here's this Vidagdha Madhava verse, one of my favorite verses. And it's in relation to chanting, Rupa Goswami's composition. 4 parts. There's the glories, or Mahima, of the holy name. I do not know how much nectar the 2 syllables Krishna have produced. Next is the mouth making the sound. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. So the speaking part of the body, and then it goes to the hearing part of the body. When that name enters the holes of the ears, we desire many millions of ears. Now that's the auditory process that's attentively hearing, like the piercing of the spiritual ear. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert. So mind and sense control becomes possible by controlling one sense, that's the ear. Today you'll have lots of opportunity for the mind to wander. And you have lots of opportunity for the mind to be conquered. And how to conquer? Hearing. The mind then becomes conquered. That's when the holy name is dancing in the courtyard of the heart. Of course, it's poetic. Dancing in the courtyard of the heart. So, glories, making the sound, carefully hearing the sound, it moves to the heart. And one feels heart emotions in relation to the holy name, one may, if one hears attentively, then that's the sequence. And the mind becomes conquered, or sometimes stunned, and the senses become inert. Say it negatively. Without controlling the mind and senses, you're not practicing yoga. Say it positively. Practice of yoga requires, it includes, it's the process of controlling the mind and senses. Yoga is controlling the mind and senses. Without that, it's not yoga. And the best of all yogas is bhakti yoga, and the best of all processes in bhakti yoga, most recommended for this age at least, is the chanting of the holy name. And that's what we're attempting to do in our life, and especially for today. Next slide. This is from Harinam Chintamani. We mentioned it yesterday from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When one chants Namabhas with faith, so here's the Namabhas, but you add faith, and faith means you do something. Faith means, for example, you strive to overcome offenses. That's a symptom that there's faith. Anarthas quickly flee. Next. That's what it's supposed to look like. A candle that's not flickering. When we learn to hear as we chant, the opportunity to remember Krishna will automatically arise. So, Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, or Leela Smarana. At that time, the Ashtakalya Leela Smarana will become possible. There is no need artificially to try for it. We mentioned this yesterday. Here it is again. He makes this point because it was one of the practices that persons who weren't qualified had heard and they were trying to imitate. Lila Smarana, the eightfold pastimes of Krishna, they're broken into different times of the day, and there's leelas that are appropriate for each time of the day. And to enter into the mood of Krishna's pastimes, Lila Smarana, Ashtakalya, Lila Smarana. It's a nice term. But with it becomes power. It doesn't mean you need not do that, but you don't need a separate effort. Or say it differently, by chanting nicely, it becomes natural. One will still, when you eat, digesting your food is natural, but you still eat. So the Ashtakalya Lila Smarana may be a practice that very advanced devotees do, but it's powered by proper chanting. Without proper chanting, it's a show. It's an imitation. It's not recommended by Bhaktisiddhanta for sure. Because there were some of his followers, or people of that time, at least, who liked that idea. Sahajiyas liked that idea. But we should constantly pray to the holy name for his mercy. And this is taken from a letter, Bhaktisiddhanta letter, teachings on the holy name. Sharanapati is a term, it's related to Sharanagati, and Sharana means shelter. It's the 1866 Bhagavad Gita. Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. So Sharana indicates taking shelter of the holy name. There's something that we need to do from our side. We need to make an endeavor, and not just occasionally, but consistently, and a service mood. Next. Then, as was spoken in this little letter, calling for mercy, eagerness to receive descending mercy. So effort and mercy. Effort and mercy. It's a nice couplet. One of the really beautiful lessons in Sharanapati is the Damodar Leela. She's trying to bind Krishna, trying to bind Krishna, trying to bind Krishna, trying to bind Krishna. She can't bind Krishna. 150 feet of rope don't go around Krishna's waist. She's bewildered. But then Krishna gives his mercy, and then she can bind him. So that's the Sharanapati. Here's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's words. Shraddha, which is endowed with ruchi for bhakti, culminates in the symptoms of bhakti. What? Go back. No, not too. Next. There, stop. So ruchi for bhakti, ruchi, that's a stage of bhakti called ruchi. It's this taste that precedes attachment, precedes bhava and prema. It's in the stages of bhakti. So ruchi for the service itself leads to ruchi for the object of service. So chanting specifically in the mood of a feeling. No, you can't just artificially wind it up or dial it up. But if one is hearing with great attention, it happens. There's some feeling for the process of chanting and the chanting itself. You experience while chanting. Some of you may already be there. Some of you may know some devotees that are already there. But those devotees that are already there, they express and they live their life where they're enthusiastic. Today, another opportunity to chant the holy name. It's not a chore. For some, it's a chore. It's a duty, and so I do it because it's a duty, because I do my duties. It's one of my duties. Because I know it's beneficial for me. I brush my teeth because it's oral hygiene. I take a bath because, you're supposed to take a bath. And I feel good after I take a bath, so I take a bath. Beyond the duty platform is the attraction platform. So that's the ruchi. Could we go back, please? Thank you. Ruchi for bhakti culminates in the symptoms of bhakti. The symptoms of bhakti are the stages of ecstasy, tears come to the eyes, hairs stand on end, etc., etc. Symptoms of bhava, bhakti. They come We don't have to try for them. Some people try for them. We don't have to try for them. You try for the one thing. Hear with your spiritual ear, or hear with full attention. And there's the tendency is inattention and distraction, and we discussed, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained. When this, you just bring the mind back. This is abhyasa, practice. And practice, cleansing gradually some affinity for the process of chanting, the bhakti process of chanting, hearing and chanting. It happens. The potency is there, we strive to hear, and it becomes successful. Next. So that's the lesson for this short class this morning. The ear conquers the mind. So if you may find that your mind will wander. Maybe you won't, but most of us will. And here's the instruction. Hear. Just intention, attention, hear. The intention is, I want to be in my relationship with Krishna, or the theme that Shyamasundar was presenting is, I belong to Krishna. That's my intention, is I forgot and I want to restore. I belong to Krishna. That's the intention. Then comes attention to the sound. Make the sound, but hear the sound. And then the mind becomes conquered. The ear conquers the mind. That's the message for this morning. And I think that's it. So let us turn the lights on. And we're going to focus on the holy name. Whatever works for you. See the deities. There, we should have tulsi plants in a few places in the temple room. And observe Mona Vrata, please. I mean, you all know what that means. If you have children, you may have to have some conversation with your children, but otherwise, till we end in the afternoon, it's when you take prasadam, it's Mona. When you're doing what you're doing. The purpose is controlling the speaking power and directing it towards one thing. That's the purpose. And you may want to look at notes and you may want to sit and take a break and write down things that you heard, reflect, connect, and move with those things that you heard that are powerful and inspiring, and go with it. Stay focused. And best of luck. 64 rounds or more. Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Premanandi.